is. And we're at 54 centimeters, 21.5 inches. That's elbow to elbow or corner to corner. So 54, that's 27. So I'm just going to make a little mark here, right through. Doesn't have to be to the millimeter in the middle, but yeah, within 5 millimeters for sure. So keep that in mind. Okay, we've made a change to how we're constructing the eye bolt here. We're adding 2 nuts, one to lock the other in place. The reason we're doing this is to try to position the first nut approximately where we believe it will end up needing to be on your loom. There is a little bit of variance potential if you do need to raise or lower your harness in order to get it to the right height for to get your harnesses at the right height. Then you can still adjust, but this should be close to where they need to be, and that just helps in the setup so that you don't have as many challenges as you're trying to set the harness heights. Okay, now we're going to attach the tie-up cords to the lambs. We're going to put 5 per side. I've got one done here where I've already slid them on. I want to talk a bit about the Texolf cord. This is a critical point because if you use the wrong hole here, it could break, or if you use a different cord or a different hole than you should, then the distance that you pull the harness down could be too short. So it's very important that we get this correct. So you use the first usable hole after it's been cut. Now, what I mean by usable hole, I'm trying to get inside this one here, and you can see that the cut is very close to the edge of the Texolf loop. So it was cut right here, and the problem with using this hole is that when I say we cut, we actually burn the nylon cord, and in that burning process it weakens this loop, okay? Which means you should not use that first loop, always this second one. Now there is one exception. If you cut a piece of Texolf in the middle, well, then you've got lots of extra room, and I want to use this end as an example. See, this was cut more in the middle. It's got 2 long ends, so this is the correct loop to use in this case, okay? Because that's strong, it's never going to break, it hasn't been weakened through melting, and that's the thing that you need to look at is, you know, the first strong full loop. Second thing is that there should be 12 loops between here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And so you attach on one end to this lamb, and on the other end is you're attaching to the treadle screw that we screwed in earlier in the video. Okay, now we're going to do the treadle tie-up. This is all still part of the setup, and now we're getting into adjusting the harness heights to the correct position. In order to do that, you have to have every harness tied up, and the way we do that is by doing a tabby plain weave tie-up. So I've pulled out 2, 4, 6, 8 on the left side, and 1, 2, 1, 3, 5, 7 on the right side here. And we're just going to take the middle 2 tails and we're going to tie those up. So we're going to take the back number 8 first, just so we can see things the best. And you just pull it down and slip it over top of the screw head for number 8. We'll reposition in a minute to give you an up close of this process, but for right now, the other thing you'll find is if you push the treadle down, then the cam actually helps keep the cam will help keep the treadle down, and you can attach your tie-up cord. So maybe we'll reposition right now and I'll show you with some of the other ones. Okay, so putting a tie-up cord on the screw head, I'm pulling the lamb down with the cord, getting it in front of that eye or in front of that screw head, and then just with my finger pushing it over the loop. The next one. Like that. And we'll see you at the next step. Okay, now we're going to start with the adjustments of the harnesses. You can see we're nowhere near where we want to be. Things are almost level here and they need to be on a nice sloping angle. The things that we're going to adjust is we're going to adjust the harness height and the level of a harness, so left to right. Okay, we're not going to worry about things like this over here. They will adjust themselves by themselves. This one's sticking out a little bit further than this one's sticking out a little bit further than this one. Those things will adjust themselves as we go. 2 things, and it's all focused on the harnesses. The other thing I want to point out is the cam positions. They don't all necessarily have to be perfectly aligned with each other. That's secondary. This is, the levelness of the harnesses is the primary adjustment. So don't look under the hood. Look at these things. Adjust here only. Okay, now let's get started with that. We've got an adjustment block here. This is 8 centimeters on the long side and 6 centimeters on the short side. So we're going to adjust harness 1 so that it's 8 centimeters from the top of the castle here, or the bottom of the castle. And then we're going to look on the back of the loom and adjust so that we are 6 centimeters from the bottom of the castle. Once we have shaft 8 and shaft 1 adjusted to the correct height, then we're going to adjust all of the other harnesses so they slope from 8 down to 1 in an even slope. And that's not to be adjusted to the millimeter, it's eyeball that it's the correct slope. And we're also looking for levelness left to right on all the harnesses. So let's get started with the front here. When I put this block here, I see that harness 1 is a little bit too high. Now the way we adjust the height of the harness is by adjusting the nuts down here. Okay, adjusting the position of these nuts. So if I want to lower a harness, I'm going to lower these nuts. Now the top nut is a locking nut, the bottom nut is the actual nut that's holding the position. So I'm first going to unscrew the top nut to loosen And then by just creating some slack here, you can turn the bottom nut down a little bit. So I'm screwing the bottom nut tighter. And sometimes I need two hands. Sometimes another way to do this is just to push this cord down, and then the bottom nut can spin nice and easily. And you let it come down, bring the lock nut back on top, tighten that up so it's not going to move. And we're going to grab our adjusting lock again, slide it in here. Now I'm getting in there nice and smooth. Now, of course, if I've got 8 centimeters nicely on this side, if I have 8 centimeters on the other side, then we're level as well. So I go over here. I've got a little bit of play, as you can see. So we need to adjust the level, and you do that with this screw or this bolt right here. So it's good that we're working on harness 1. You can see that nice and easily. So I'm going to screw this in deeper in order to get the left side to come upwards. There, we screwed it in somewhat. And now that's pretty, there's not, I'm trying to wiggle it and there's no wiggle there. So that is perfect. So now harness 1 is exactly 8 centimeters from the bottom of the castle. Now we're going to turn the loom around and we're going to adjust the shaft number 8. Okay, back side of the loom. Put the block in here. Now I'm using the short side because I want 6 centimeters. I've got a ways to go here. On this side, it's not quite as much. It's a lot less. So that means that the shaft is not level, as well as it needs to come upwards a little bit. Now, if you need a harness to come up, that means we need to loosen this bolt or this nut. So again, I'm going to remove the pressure here and loosen these nuts a little bit. Lock it into place again. Let's see what we got here now. And we're getting still a little bit too low. Now I've gotten a little too. That's just sliding over there. It's a little bit snug, so I'm going to lower it just a little bit. There we go. So that's a nice 6 millimeter distance. This one is still out of whack, which means we're left to right, we're not right. I'm going to the back side here, and I'm going to adjust that same screw, which is a little challenging to get to on shaft 8. So I'm going to do it a little bit more from the bottom. You see, I'm going to rotate it down here, and I'm going to screw it inwards. I'm just using, and you're going to ask, how's he rotating this cam downwards? And well, I'm doing that by using my index finger of my left hand and just pushing the cam down. You can also push a treadle down. I could have accomplished the same thing by pushing this treadle down. Now I've got the position of the cam so that I can adjust it. So I should actually try and check this out now. Still a little bit of movement there. Turn it a little bit more. we're still getting a little bit of, has that changed? So that's lowered the whole shaft. You see this side, so it's lowered this side. So now my measuring block showing that I have to raise the whole shaft. It looks like the shaft is more level because the distance here is about the same on both sides, but my whole shaft has to come out. So we'll do that here. Place the lock nut. See what that looks like. There we go. There we go. Looks like we've got a good position. Okay, so we have a level shaft and a correct height shaft. I'm just going to lock the lock nut on top here. So that's not going to move. And now we're going to turn the loom around again, and then we're going to work on adjusting so that all the shafts slope downwards from back to front at an even slope, not jagged. So you can see the jaggedness right here, and that's not what we want. We want it to be nice and even. So these two shafts have to come upward a little bit. This one might need to go down a little bit. We'll see that as we go, and it's easier to see from the front, so you can see the slope from the front of all the shafts at the same time. Okay, we'll come back in 2 minutes. Okay, I cut out for a little break, but here we are again on to shaft 3. 1 and 2 are very level. I will say that we noticed that the hook here on 2 was not as deep as it needs to be. That changed the level position that we were struggling with there. And so now that's set, everything's equal, and we are level. Number 3. So we're a little high on that side, a little low on this side. So let's try this first. See what happens here. All right. So I'm unscrewing the bolt. See, I don't know if you can see it, but top of the side here is coming up. No, I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. A little bit more. We also need to do, so that's something interesting to actually talk about, is because this is so it's important to see that the thread, as I unscrew this bolt, that the cord comes with it. If the cord is sticking closer to the cam, then the effect is nil. So just double check that every time. So we're on 3. Still need to go a little further. See, here we go. See how much it's stuck there. And so if I do that, now I would even say that this side is higher, and so we went too far. How does that look? That looks a lot better. Okay, I think we're done with number 3. We're going to go on to number 4. Number 4 looks sadly too low, so we're going to go to the nut. And the reason with number 3 we didn't go down to the nuts to adjust is because it was pretty much at the right height. It was just levelness. So number 4, my arms are having a hard time getting here. All right, well, you can start to see it, but it's not quite enough yet. So I'm just unscrewing the nuts on number 4. There we go. Starting to see maybe a little bit too much here, and we're not quite level as well. That's a little better. And we'll try to adjust level. I think a little too far on that.
Check again.
There, that looks good.
Check again. Push now again.
Oh, the cam. Yeah, check the cam to make sure the cord is actually. See the cord on the cam? In good position. So, and that's what you'll see. You might have seen sometimes I'll just push the treadle down and roughly let it go. That's to kind of yank the cords, see where everything shakes out. If something is stuck and gets freed, and then all of a sudden you're not level or a harness is not at the right height. You're starting to see the slope forming. Got a couple more to go here, but we're getting awfully nice here. So, on to number 5. Or was that number 5? That was number 5. On to number 6.
5's okay.
Yeah, or was
You did 4.
I did 4. Okay,
yes,
so
the 5's okay.
So that was 4, and 5 is actually in a good spot. So we're moving on to number 6. 6 is too low, so we are going to go and adjust that. Again, it's the bolts, or the nuts, I mean, on the eye bolt at the cam, and I'm loosening those nuts to raise the harness. All right, so that's number 6. I think I'd like, yeah, that's about right actually. That's actually pretty good. Levelness, it's pretty much even with 5 over here, whereas it's sticking up just above 5 over on this side. So we got a little bit of levelness to work on. How does that look? It still actually could come up a little bit more. Okay, now we have 7 to go. Number 7, and of course 8 is already adjusted. 7 is too low. So we'll adjust those nuts. That's gone a little bit too far. Okay, that looks good on that side, but it looks a little bit low on that side.
So left's coming up.
Hmm?
Left's coming up.
Left needs to come up yet. There we go. And the whole thing is now a little bit low. So that last adjustment, I felt that. So when I adjusted the levelness, the left side came up, the right side goes down. As you're leveling, you're moving both sides a little bit at a time in both in opposite directions. Left side's going up, right side's going down, and that's when you're screwing the bolt inwards. And so, yeah, you might be looking over here, And you see that one is good, but then this one has gone too far, so it's kind of right in between that point. So what I saw is I thought the whole harness needed to come up a little bit, which I just did, and now I'm very happy with the slope we have here. And the same slope is down below in the bottom harnesses. And if you pan out, pull back a little bit. Now you see that the lamb cords here are all quite equal, whereas before they were, one was here, one was there, and a little bit wonky. But all of those things, you can't really judge them until you have this done, because this guides everything. Okay, so at this point, we've got the beater hinges at a good height. We've got the harnesses at a good height. Once we put the rest of the loom together and put a warp on, I expect you'll get a pretty decent shed already from without having to do any further adjusting. However, from this point on, you don't need to do any adjusting until you get a shed on. Once the shed is on the loom, then you can start saying, okay, my shed's not quite big enough. My shed is being deflected by the beater. That's when you start making additional adjustments if they are required. Keep in mind that this 8 centimeters and 6 centimeters, that is for the most part where you want your shafts to be. However, if you're fine tuning your shed, if you end up having number 1 here at 7.5, because that's where you get the optimal shed, well, everything else has to adjust by 0.5 centimeter as well. But because of the variances in Texelf cord, the loop lengths and different things, you've got 4 different cords that are all cut at different positions, and there's just variances that are within this string cord, Texelf cord system. So with all that in mind, the correct position for your loom for the harnesses might be 0.5 centimeter lower or 0.5 centimeter higher than someone else. So don't worry about these things until you get your shed on, then we optimize the shed after that. Same thing goes for the cams up here. It's not precisely even. Well, that variance, I mean, it should have that slight angle the same as the shafts. However, that slight variance can be variances in the cords. It can be the variances in the tensions of the springs. There's just so many little variables that can play into that minor bit of difference. But this is not an area where you need to worry about. This is not an area where you start to get concerned and say, oh, I've got to make adjustments. Okay, let's move on to the next step and get this loom finished.